The Jamie Dyer Show.
Thank you, Shanique, for joining us. Tell me, what is your passion?
I am passionate about breaking your barriers. I am passionate about seeing other people live their best lives. I'm passionate about seeing all God's children live the way that He has called us to live.
Wow. I mean, you'll be forgiven me for saying that's quite a broad subject. Can you narrow it down just a little bit as to what you mean?
Okay, of course. So when I say I'm passionate about breaking your barriers, I mean that whatever keeps us from living our best lives, I am passionate about removing ourselves from the boxes that we put ourselves in, whether it be by negative thoughts, negative emotional patterns, stuff like that.
Yeah. So is that pretty much a mindset thing?
It is. It actually starts within the mind, and the things that we do not address, of course, they then trickle down into your heart and then they become this whole emotional baggage. So, yes, it does start with the mindset.
Wow. I mean, how did you come to be interested in this?
This is based off my own life experiences. I am only 25, and people say, then who qualifies you to speak on these things? And I say, my God qualifies me, and my experience qualifies me, because I have never been one to step up and take the challenge to do something beyond fear, beyond feeling unworthy, beyond thinking that I'm not good enough. So when I say break these barriers, I am serious about that.
So, what would be your advice for the first steps to breaking the barriers? And does it depend on the situation?
Yes, it does depend on the situation. Some barriers do take years, because it took me years to realize that I had so much potential that I wasn't using or maximizing on. So I recommend three things, or three B's, for you to acknowledge, or for you to see that you have barriers and you need to break them. So the first one would be aware. Secondly, be mindful. Be aware means you now have knowledge of the things that are happening in your life or in your space. Being mindful means that you are now able to catch yourself doing some things that are not necessarily fruitful. And then being proactive is the third and final B, which means you're taking action to be more productive.
But taking all of this into context and thinking realistically, how much of it should we take on board? Because a lot of advice is, oh, just ignore that or just leave that to one side. How much should we be taking awareness of?
We should be taking awareness of, first of all, what we think about, the music that we listen. We are people, and of course, music just gives us a whole vibe. So we need to be careful of these things, be careful of the way we speak. We cannot overemphasize how much of an importance it is to speak positively. There is a saying that if we hear something every day, or if you hear something every day, sooner or later that's going to become a part of your reality. So hearing that you're an idiot, for example, every day, oh, you're stupid, one day you are going to start believing in that.
Yeah, almost like it's almost like an inserted thought.
Yes.
Like it might not necessarily be true, but somebody has put it there through repetition, which of course, as children, repetition is the one thing that kind of helps us to learn things. And what you're saying is it can also help you learn quite unnatural or very negative behavior.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. How do you communicate the message that you're talking about to people?
Right. So I communicate by doing what I preach. So there is no way I can be as effective as I want to be unless I put these things into practice. A part of me breaking barriers and showing other people that it can be done is when I started doing talk shows on Talk Truth series. I broke a barrier because not many people are given the opportunity to share. We keep waiting on big breaks from the big stations and the big channels and the big platforms, but I decided to break that barrier and give other people exposure, hence bringing them into a new way of doing things by showing them that it can be done.
There are so many ways now to get yourself out there, and it sounds like you work with loads of people on this thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people over the past few months.
Wow. I mean, have you ever not had an answer for somebody? Like, if somebody asks you a question, have you ever had a point where you're like, oh, I need to take a step back and go and look it up?
Of course. There is no one in this world who has the answer to everything. So I would say that what my duty is as a person when I meet you is to help you to find the answer within you, because the truth is we have everything that we need to get a better life or to live the lives that we want to live. And the answer is already inside you. So me breaking barriers is showing you that you can break yours and you can do the things or do it better just the same. So it's in you. I don't have the answer, but you do.
I do believe that in most cases, the answer is within yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Introspection, reflection, all of that, you will discover it.
I think so, but there must be methods on helping you to discover that answer inside yourself.
There are. I did a lot of reflection. And the thing that happened, what happened to me last year before I started the mission of breaking barriers, is that I recognized that we are in the perfect season for it. And what happens is a lot of us, we have in the hype of the new year, we have all of these goals and we want to lose weight. We want to start families, businesses, and do all of that. But the thing is, midway into the new year, we stop because we are either lazy, we don't believe in ourselves, we are afraid of taking chances and risks, and so we don't do anything about what we said we would do last year. And that was it for me.
I mean, it sounds like you've learned to take action on what it is that you do, and I do agree with you that we often make promises to ourselves and we don't keep them for whatever reason. Which is a shame, actually. I mean, do you have people that you turn to for help on certain matters?
Of course, and while I don't consider myself anyone's therapist, let me just say that I do have people that I look up to give me guidance. As I said, we don't know everything. So just like a therapist needs another therapist who is maybe a bit higher in ranking to give them some kind of guidance and advice, I also have those people. So I have my husband, I have other family and friends that I look up to, and I read a lot. Yeah.
I mean, what kind of books are you reading? What do you read?
I read the one that stood out to me the most, which really got me into the zone of breaking barriers, is Do It Afraid by, oh Lord, she's a minister, a gospel minister, Joyce Meyer. So that one really broke me out of fear, because fear was my biggest struggle. I read Think and Grow Rich. I read books by, what's his name? Oh my God, why do I keep forgetting? But I soon tell you. I read a lot of books. Yeah.
Yeah, I can get that from well, just your manner and what it is that you're saying there. I mean, the first book that you mentioned, where you say it kind of helped you with fear, what was it? Was there kind of a single sentence or a single thought that maybe spoke to you?
It was her entire testimony. I have always struggled with being afraid to speak. I would never speak to you on this podcast if I was still struggling with that. So she really opened up my eyes to see that once we rationalize with our fears and we see that it's not going to cause us any great harm, then of course, just gradually expose yourself to it. Get out into the world. Phobias are natural to everyone, of course, but it causes a greater harm being afraid than being courageous and coming out.
And in my opinion, a thought that you touched upon there, doing it slowly rather than rushing it, because obviously, as with anything, I mean, if you were learning to play an instrument, for example, you wouldn't pick up an instrument and expect to be great at it straight away. You'd have to learn over a long period of time. And I think it depends on many different factors, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And one more author that I really love, he always speaks about purpose. His name is Miles Monroe. I just love him. So these are some of the authors that I look up to.
Excellent. Have you considered writing anything down yourself, or have you started anything?
Well, I have 2 books on Amazon currently, but the one I focus on mostly is Breaking Your Barriers. And as I said, that's out of my experiences from being a child coming up. I didn't write directly about my life because I find that a lot of people do that too much. So I write it to the reader as a way of getting them to believe in themselves more, that if I did this, it can be done.
Yeah, that must have been quite a process. And you are right. There are a lot of writers that will write very personally, and it kind of feels like there are walls there, like you can't sort of look in. But how was the experience for you writing, any one of the books that you've got on Amazon?
Well, writing for me was a whole experience, and I don't even know if I can really explain it, but I cried, especially when I had to belt out what I felt about losing my mom at 15. So I cried that whole chapter out. I laughed when I spoke about the importance of being playful as people. I spoke about confidence and fear. I really dug deep. So it took me outside of myself to see all that I was holding in that really hampered my life and the relationships I had with other people. So it made me vulnerable in a good way.
And I assume the purpose of writing the book is so that you share your vulnerabilities to help other people.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I love talking to people that have written down their experience in order to help others. I mean, you say you've done this podcast. How long have you been doing that?
I started in March of this year. That's a little bit after I published Breaking Your Barriers. I started the end of March, and my first author was interviewed in May. That's on the 12th, on a Tuesday. And I did that because I realized that as authors, even when you're just starting out, you don't naturally have a big platform, right? So instead of sitting and waiting for, the big TV stations and radio stations to interview you, and you might have to pay a certain amount of money that you may not be able to afford, why not give other people the exposure that I wasn't getting as a way of paying good deeds forward? 2 people interviewed me when I just published my book, and so I decided to just give back just the same.
Yeah, that's a very positive attitude towards it, because there are so many, as we said earlier, there are so many ways these days in which to get out there, and it seems like you're using your knowledge, your skills, your expertise, and your influence in order to not just help yourself, but help other people. Now, I should tell the listener, you are in Jamaica.
Yes.
And at this moment in time, obviously, the world is going through a pandemic. Was your decision to start up something interviewing people, was that swayed anyway by the current situation?
I mean, the current situation has a different meaning for each person. For some people that I've spoken to on the podcast, I've had to address fears, some insecurities, some grief, because persons have been there who lost loved ones even during the pandemic. And we have had to debunk a lot of myths surrounding a lot of these things that we face. So yes, it's I wouldn't say it's a setback or a fall taken by the Talk Truth series. I would say it's more of getting closure or helping people get closure during this time because we address real issues.
Yeah, which a lot of people need right now. They need that reassurance. If people wanted to find out about either the series that you're currently doing or the books or anything else for that matter, where would they need to look?
They can look for, well, if they're looking for me per se, they would find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. My name is the same, Shanique MJ Davis, or at this Shanique. For the book, it's on Amazon, Breaking Your Barriers, Change Unhealthy Life Cycles, and Unravel the True You. And the paperback is $15.99 and the ebook is $7.99.
Excellent. And the book, who would you say is kind of your ideal reader?
My ideal reader is that person who has always struggled with fear, has always been bombarded with negative thoughts of inferiority, who have suffered from losing their loved one. My ideal reader is the person who can't seem to find confidence within themselves to go beyond what the world has shut them in by, the mockings and the jeerings. My ideal reader is that young woman or young man who is most vulnerable to negativity.
And I know that there are many people out there that will relate to those feelings, even if, it's now or in the very near future. But I find it such an interesting subject, this whole thing, this breaking that mindset and overcoming fears and phobias and whatnot. It's been absolutely fantastic to talk to you. Absolutely great. Where can people find your series?
We are currently on Facebook at Talk Truth Series and YouTube Talk Truth Series. Talk Truth is one word, series is another word.
Excellent. Well, I'll certainly be going to check those out. And I'd like to say, Shanique, thank you for appearing on the podcast today.
And thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
The Jamie Dyer Show.